You're listening to Storytime in Paris on Paris Underground Radio. For more great content and to join our book club, please join us on Patreon. Since well before Victor Hugo looked up at Notre Dame and thought, what if a hunchback lived in there? Authors have been inspired by Paris. Welcome to the Storytime in Paris podcast on Paris Underground Radio, where we keep that tradition alive by showcasing an author with a French connection in each episode. Every episode will feature 5 questions asked by you, our author's biggest fans, and answered live on air. Then our authors will treat us to a reading of an excerpt from their book. I'm your host, Jennifer Garrity. Would you like to join the Storytime in Paris book club? Head on over to patreon.com/Paris Underground Radio and stay tuned to the end of this episode for more information. My guest this week is the woman Roxane Gay called a consummate storyteller. Among her many accolades, Leesa Cross-Smith has been longlisted for the 2022 Mark Twain American Voice in Literature Award and the 2021 Joyce Carol Oates Literary Prize. And her novel So We Can Glow was listed as one of NPR's best books of 2020. Her latest novel, Half-Blown Rose, is the Amazon Editor's Spotlight for June 2022, the inaugural pick for Amazon's Book Club Sarah Selects, and the Barnes & Noble Book Club pick for June 2022. Half-Blown Rose is the story of Vincent, a woman whose husband recently published a book uncovering secrets about his past and their marriage. She decides to escape to Paris in an effort to make sense of it all. There, she meets Loup, a charming Frenchman 20 years her junior, with whom she begins an intense affair. In the months that follow, Vincent must decide what really matters and who she'd most like to become. Without further ado, please allow me to introduce Leesa Cross-Smith, author of Half-Blown Rose. Hello, Leesa. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So can you start off by telling us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, my name is Leesa Cross-Smith. I live in Kentucky. I usually start out by saying I'm a homemaker because I am married to my high school sweetheart husband and we have 2 teenagers, but I'm also a writer. I'm the author of 6 books. My latest is Half-Blown Rose, which is set in Paris.
Amazing. A high school sweetheart. That's incredible.
Yeah, it's pretty cute. My kids think it's pretty gross too, so we're doing our job.
That's a parent's job, so good job.
Absolutely.
Can you tell us a little bit about this latest book of yours, Half-Blown Rose?
Yeah, so Half-Blown Rose is set in Paris. It's about a woman called Vincent who, after learning of her husband's betrayal, she escapes to her parents' beautiful apartment in Paris. What her husband Killian has done is he's written a book that's also called Half-Blown Rose. And in it, he divulges secrets he didn't bother telling her while they've been married for about 25 years. So she needs a break. So she goes to Paris for that break. And while she's in Paris, she teaches art at the Modern Art Museum. And she also comes across a young man called Loup who wears very short shorts and skateboards to class. She resists him for a couple months, but then it's sort of inevitable. They start hanging out and they become a lot closer.
So what is your connection to Paris?
So in 2019 was my first time we came to Paris, and we went on a trip. We went to London, we went to Paris, we went to Amsterdam, we went to several other places in England. And yeah, so I came back home and I knew I was going to start working on a project. And then the world shut down really because of COVID. And I really wanted to go back to Paris. We had plans to go back to Paris in 2020, but could not, of course. So I sat at my kitchen table and went back to Paris through the book. It's just one of my favorite cities in the world. And I really wanted to create as immersive a book that was possible at the time for me sitting at my kitchen table, unable to travel, but wanting to allow the reader to travel through the book as much as I possibly could. So it was really healing and therapeutic for me to be able to escape the world. And I wanted to give that same sort of gift to any readers who also at times need to escape the world or take a trip to Paris for cheap, for the price of a hardback if they can't get over there, for the same price of an airline ticket.
That's a very good deal.
Yeah.
So how long did you spend in Paris?
I was only in Paris for about 4 or 5 days when we were going through. And then after that, we went to Amsterdam.
That's incredible because you do paint a very realistic portrayal of Paris.
Yeah, it felt thank you so much for the compliment. And I really yeah, felt like we were there for a lot longer. It had really been in my heart for so long, and then actually being able to be there, and then it really settled in my heart in a way that was really special. It's a really special city. Clearly, I decided to write an entire book about it. The book is really a love letter to Paris.
Do you think you would come back again?
Oh, absolutely. I can't wait. Yeah, yeah, we have plans. It's just like, trying to remake travel plans, but oh, absolutely. It's first on my list.
Yeah, you can set another book here because then it's like a good excuse to come do some research, you know?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
So I have collected some questions for you. And my first question is this. It's about the characters' names. So a number of the main characters are named after famous painters. There's Vincent, the main character, who is a woman but named Vincent. Theo, Monet, and then even in the Half Blown Rose book, inside the book, you've got Picasso or Pica.
Mhm.
So these are well-known artists that many of us will have our own impressions of and feelings about. So how did you decide to name the characters this way? And were there certain impressions you were hoping we'd bring along with us?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And as far as wanting the reader to have a certain impression, no, not really. I just really love the name Vincent, and Vincent van Gogh is my favorite artist. So that was easy for me. And I also just love the quirkiness of being a woman called Vincent. She has an older brother named Theo because Vincent van Gogh had a brother named Theo, and Monet because I do have a girlfriend named Monet, and it's just beautiful. And Vincent has a little sister named Monet. What Killian has done in his book, which is a bit like autofiction, we don't really know what's real or not real. We don't know which parts of it he is making up. But he has changed his name from Killian to Kian, and he has also changed Vincent's name to another famous artist name. So her name is just Picasso in the book. It's just something that he's done. No, I just picked Picasso because he's just everyone recognizes the name. But I do like that idea. I like the idea that people would, and I especially love the play on impressionism and post-impressionism. If someone wants to have a certain impression or post-impression of the artist, they're free to do that for sure.
Yeah, I don't know if it's because of my feelings about these painters or if it's because of the way that you wrote the book. I don't know how I would possibly be able to separate the two in my own mind,
Mhm.
but it felt impressionistic in the way it was writing. I saw the same kinds of colors and things when you were writing, so I really enjoyed the interplay between that. Sort of subtle but also there.
Well, that's beautiful, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. No, thank you. So, speaking of which, there are a lot of different artistic influences in this book, even beyond the visual artists. We've got film references and books, even games with books, and of course, music. So, you created some playlists in your book, and I wanted to know a little bit more about those and how maybe they shaped your writing.
Yeah, so there are 15 or 16. I took one out. Sometimes I'm not quite sure how many, but different playlists in the books just set the tone of what is going on in Vincent's life at the time. I really wanted to do that. It just adds another layer of immersion. So throughout the book, there are little bits of scripts. Maybe if the reader wants to look at Vincent, imagining her life like some sort of movie, she is living in this liminal space for a year, a liminal space, a space that's not meant to last. So her life feels like a movie sometimes. So there's little bits of screenplay and scripts in the book. There are also snippets of Killian's book, which is called Half Blown Rose. So we get to see exactly what she was reading for the first time when she learned, along with the rest of the world, what his secrets were, which is the reason she ran off to Paris, of course. In addition to the music, I also have bits of her travel journals when they travel around. So I did all that stuff just to make it more immersive. And the music part was just another layer of that. So that if a reader who enjoys listening to playlist or music, either while they're reading or after they finish the section, all of those are available on my Spotify and my website. So I just really love setting the mood like that. So when they take the train to a place, if they take the train to London, there are some songs there that reference London, and some other songs too. She's working in her studio because she makes jewelry. They're the songs she would listen to in there. She and Loup send songs back and forth to each other. It's a playlist called Lust and Conversation. Just it's their way of flirting. This is a song that reminds me of you, and they send songs back and forth. So I listed all those out in there just for fun, really. I love encountering those when I'm reading another book, and then I love doing whatever I want when I'm writing my own book. So I just kept putting them in there because I think it's fun.
Do you listen to music when you write?
I cannot listen to music in English when I write. So I can listen
Oh.
to instrumental music. I can listen to movie scores. I can listen to songs in another language. But even when I start learning the language, which I've done with French and Korean, I have to scoot back to just instrumental music. I can't listen to a wordy song while I'm writing. But usually I write in the quiet and I'm not listening to any music at all.
Interesting. Did you ever listen to some of the music to get you into the mood, or was it more afterwards, like to add a layer to what you'd written?
Um, maybe kind of both. I don't really have to listen to music to get in the mood to write, but I'll just sometimes be so when I was this is more when I was deciding what songs to put on the playlist, I would listen to the playlist there. So when the playlist is in the book, I would really listen to that and be like, do these songs go well together? Does this really work for right here? So it was more kind of just like as part of the process that way.
Yeah, I love the playlist. I think my favorite was probably the one when she's returning to Paris. I really enjoyed that playlist. There's lots of French songs.
Yeah, well, that's full of French songs. She was
Mm.
ready to get back. Yeah. It's funny that you said that one because I really love that one too because it was just soaked in. I'm going back to Paris. I'm so excited.
Yep.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
Yeah, I know that feeling myself, so I get
Oh,
it.
yeah, yeah.
So you kind of answered this question already. Vincent travels a lot in the book to France and the UK and to Amsterdam. I was going to ask why you chose these places, but now I guess I'm more curious about how you decided to interweave that into what you were writing.
Yeah, well, in real life when we went, I chose those places just because those were where I wanted to go so much my whole life, the places I wanted to see, and it was we could get there by train easily. I had them follow sort of the same path, but specifically when they do travel, Vincent is going to visit her brother Theo, who lives in Amsterdam. So we had to get to Amsterdam. So it was just a way of Vincent and Loup spending this sweet time together. They also go to the south of France and they drive around. So I really wanted to put them on trains and cars together, staying at hotels together, going for walks together. I really wanted to build this intimacy between them. And so they could get right there. Everywhere they wanted to go was right there for them to go there. And it's so hard to go to Europe and not want to go everywhere, at least for me. I also just really love trains. I love traveling by train. Trains are also liminal spaces. So they're in these spaces for a short amount of time. My train rides are always too short, even if they're like 3 or 4 hours long. I always wish they were longer. So I just wanted to make sure I was pushing that intimacy between them in these spots and really just dreaming, writing the book during the pandemic, just dreaming of where I would want to go or what I would want to do if we were free to travel again, and really thinking about the things we had taken for granted, the easy travel that we had taken for granted before that I've really vowed, and I think a lot of people are probably with me, to never take those sorts of things for granted again.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that that's something that's true for all of us now. Yeah. Take a million photos, but also really just soak it in while you're traveling.
Oh, for sure.
So, I want to talk a little bit more about the characters. So, many of the main relationships in the book are interracial, but the most impactful one for all of the characters who come after it is the earliest one. Can you talk a little bit about why you chose to set this relationship in Ireland in, I want to say, the 1980s?
Yeah. I don't think I have an easy answer for that outside, or maybe my answer's too easy. It's either not easy or too easy. I'm not really sure. But yeah, it's just because I wanted to. Ireland was another place we wanted to go before COVID, and I love Maeve Binchy, who's one of my favorite writers. She's an Irish writer. I also really like Sally Rooney. I've just always I've just really always loved Irish writers and Irish music, and it just interested me in that way. I needed him to be from somewhere. I really wanted him to be from somewhere I loved, because I had to spend a lot of time writing about it. And so, yeah, it's kind of hard to say those things when people ask, because there's not a deep reason why. I just liked it and picked it, and then you run with it, and then all these really beautiful things pop up because of the choices that you've made. So that's what worked for me there with him. I also really love Cillian Murphy, is one of my favorite actors, and so it just came together, just, and that's an easy cheat for me. I just pick things I love already, so I can dig right in. I don't have to do a lot of research because I already love them.
I think that's a great answer. I mean, it reads that way. It reads like you love these places.
Mm-hmm.
It reads like you know them very intimately. So it's actually a little bit surprising to me that you haven't spent so much time in these different places.
Yeah, well, thank you. High compliments. I plan to, and I want to, for sure.
Well, I'm excited to see what book comes from that.
Me too.
Curious about what's going on in Paris right now? My second podcast, Don't Miss This, takes you beyond the typical and the obvious with a weekly roundup of the best of what's happening in Paris each week. Never wonder what you're missing out on again. Listen now to Don't Miss This on parisundergroundradio.com or wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll be right back with Storytime in Paris after a word from our sponsors. And now, back to Storytime in Paris. So it seems to me that Vincent and Lou, her younger friend, student, they're both sort of going through their own comings of age.
Mm-hmm.
Like Lou is venturing out into the world sort of for the first time, really launching his career. And Vincent's in this new space. Her children have left home, and maybe it's a good time for a new beginning for her as well. What do you think it is that these characters are learning from each other?
Yeah, I mean, I love how you put that. I also love thinking about a woman in her 40s, Vincent's 44, having a coming of age. I don't like that it's just set, you can only have a coming of age when you're, 12 or 16 or 18. I don't think that's true. I think everyone goes through their own little waves of it, depending what happens in your life. Now, Vincent would have been completely happy being married to Cillian forever, but he messed that up. So now she's got a new path that she didn't really expect, but she's going to go on living and see what life has to offer now. Yeah, I really loved that. I mean, that the way that Vincent and Luke can connect there. She's 44, he's 24. He's the same exact age as the son that she has with Cillian. And what do they have in common? Well, it very simply at the beginning, in one of the first scenes, Vincent and Lou are talking about food. Well, we both have to eat. We both have to eat. So let's just eat together, and we're both, tired. So, it's time to go to bed. It's like those kind of things that people have in common no matter what age they are. Vincent has a lot of reservations about that because he's the same age as her son. So she sees herself, as a mother, in those instances. And there's a part that I think is funny because she's telling him about her son being the same age. And he's like, I'm not your actual son though. Like, you do know that, right? Like in case I need to remind you, I know I may remind you of whatever, but in case you need to remember that I'm not your actual child. And so that's what I was attempting to do over the course of the year, have a coming of age for Vincent, deciding what she wants to do with her life, whether she wants to accept Cillian's constantly wanting to get back with her. He sends her flowers every Saturday. He sends her letters. He texts and calls because he really loves her and she really loves him too. But she also needs a break. And so the relationship with Loup was surprising. She wasn't going over there to meet someone. She wasn't trying to have an affair. None of that stuff was on her list, but life happened. So she's trying to deal with it now. But I really look at it as a coming of age story for everyone, really. I feel like everyone should be a little changed by the end of the book. And I actually have Vincent address this to herself in her journal entries. She actually is like, I guess this is a coming of age or whatever, even though she feels sort of immature saying it, because shouldn't she have it all figured out by now? But that's not true for anyone.
I just think it's so, I love what you just said. I think it's so limiting to think that our life ends at 30 or 40, especially if the lifespan is now like 100 or 110.
Sure.
Yeah.
You're
maybe a third of the way through your life. God forbid it's done now. How boring would that be?
Yeah, absolutely. And, and I also just am always in my work trying to trying to have a conversation about what happens when life throws you a curveball, because we all get them. What's it look like now? Something devastating can happen, but what grows from that? Or what does your life look like a little later? Or what if you hang on a little longer? What is the beauty that can come out from that? Those are the things I always want to hold on to for my characters. I want my characters to hold on to those things too. And then we'll just hold on and go for the ride and then see what happens.
Yeah. And also, like, what connections can be made when you get all of the stuff that doesn't matter out of the way.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I love that. I love how you said that.
Yeah. So I have a bonus question for you. If I were to offer you right now, completely free, no strings attached, no hidden taxes, nothing, either Vincent's apartment in Paris or the villa in Tuscany, which would you choose?
Oh, wow. I don't know. I think maybe the villa in Tuscany, because I think that I could probably afford a place in Paris somewhere, but I don't know if I can afford a villa in Tuscany. I don't know. I feel like I might have to get back to you on that. I need to pull up Zillow and look at the actual prices to see which one would be the better deal at this point. And that's when I do sound very 43. I'm 43 years old, and so I'm like, well, let's look at which one's the best deal. But actually, I'm gonna go with both.
It's a pragmatic answer, but also, like, they're not so far from each other. So as long as
I
you've got a
know.
base in one, you can get to the other.
Yeah, or I'll split myself in two and take both. Yeah, because oh man, that they're both the dream for sure.
Yeah, yeah, nothing wrong with that.
I'm now going to play a clip from the audiobook of Half Blown Rose.
Lou is in her apartment. They are alone. How did it happen? She seriously considers the idea that she has reeled through time. Zapped from the United States to France over the summer, then zipped to another dimension where she lets 20-something-year-olds come back to her place in their slouchy striped shirts to hurt her feelings with their violent youth and attractiveness and deeply chaotic sexual energy. Lou has sequences of moments when he's always moving around everywhere, like a wasp invasion. So much. He never stops. Can he do a backflip? Run a 6-minute mile? Ride a horse? Do those complicated dino rock climbing moves Killian had been all too eager to show off once he'd mastered them? Instead of dwelling on Killian, she imagines Lou's body doing those things. Vincent hears the floor creak beneath him in the living room. He seems to be everywhere at once out there, until he pops into the kitchen with her scarf around his neck, holding the amber glass skull he's taken from the window ledge. "Memento mori," he says, clinking it softly on the countertop. "Right on. Smells so good in here, Vincent." He emphasizes her name, always making a big deal out of it. First day of journaling class in the summer, she'd introduced herself and given her students their assignment. Make a list of words you love. This can be very simple. For example, I love the word brush. Brush is not a fancy word, but to me, it's beautiful. Keep writing words for as long as you can, in whatever language you'd like. And if there's a special reason you love the word, if there's a special memory attached, include that. If the word reminds you of a song or a color or a movie or a specific person or moment, include those things too. We will paint them later. Remember, it's a museum class. Stay or leave, talk or don't. You've paid your money. What you do or don't want is up to you. We're all adults here. Enjoy. When she was finished, Lou had raised his hand. She acknowledged him, and he said her name like it was a question. "Correct?" "Like Van Gogh?" "Yep, exactly like Van Gogh. You teach art and your name is Vincent. After Van Gogh." "Correct." "Vincent. That's one word I like," he said. "All right, thank you," she said, her face warming. "Are your parents artists?" "Yes, both of them." "They are successful artists?" "Yes. Very, actually. What are the names? He asked. Several students continued listening. Others were already sketching and writing. Their names are Aurora Thompson and Solomon Court. Solico is what my dad uses for work. I've heard of them. Your mum planted herself in a greenhouse for the winter, and your dad did all that graffiti and neon album art for those funkadelic bands. I forget some of the names, but I recognize your parents' names easily. Isn't that funny? He said. It is. It is funny, Vincent said, with an atomic thrill. Another student mentioned having heard of Solico as well, saying he was a lot like Basquiat. Not only did her dad do the neon album art for those bands, he was also a songwriter who'd penned a batch of killer spacey funk hits in the mid-'70s and early '80s. Those songs were still used in commercials, movies, and TV shows, and a huge chunk of her parents' fortune was owed to that fact. Yes, and boom, now I've heard of you too. Their lovely daughter, he said. His comment was followed by a low ooh from one of his classmates. That's plenty, she said. And since we're doing names, what's yours? Lou, as in wolf. Wolf, she translated herself. Wolf, he repeated, and shoved his tongue between his teeth.
So, what's next for you? Do you have another book in the works?
I do have another book that comes out next summer. It's called Goodbye Earl. So yeah. So I'm really excited about that too. And then I'll take a little break. So the Half Blown Rose is my 5th book. Goodbye Earl next summer will be my 6th book. And yeah, we'll take some naps before we start working on book 7.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Is there any chance that we would visit the characters from Half Blown Rose again?
I don't think so. A lot of people ask me that, and it's very kind, and I love that because it just shows that, you know, there's a connection there that people are making with my characters, which is the dream as a writer. It's what I'm working so hard on. It's why it takes me years to write a book. But I don't think so. But I'm also not going to say no for sure, but I don't have any plans for it right now. But I really don't have any plans for anything else right now besides the books I have written and just like naps and BTS and playing Sims and traveling without working.
That all sounds fabulous.
Yeah, I think so too.
I always find it so hard to say goodbye to books and to characters. It's always a little bit bittersweet, but you know.
Yeah, it's hard for me too. I guess the bonus that I have is that I never say goodbye to them. Like they live, you know, their minds, so they live and they have, you know, I think about them often and they have this rich life inside of me that I know that readers can't know about because they're mine and they're in my own head. But that's the beauty of making art. And so it's like I would really encourage anyone that feels that way to make their own. Like you can make your own characters that can spend forever with you. And that's the beauty of wanting to pick up the pen yourself or pick up the guitar yourself or pick up the paintbrush yourself. Like that's really the beauty, I think, about making your own art and, you know, absorbing all this art, but then being inspired by it. And then where does that lead you? And so it's like, I gave that to Vincent in the book, and she is like teaching a class and wanting to inspire people to look at their own memories and colors and how it relates to their own lives, to make their own art, always inspired by the things around us, but then how does that grow? And then we in turn make art that inspires other people. And it's this really, really beautiful thread that I really believe in and that I know it's real because I feel it all the time. And I love seeing that from other people when people are sharing. And so that part of it, I always want to encourage people to pick up their own thing. Even, you know, and we talk, you know, people talk a lot now about whether you feel like you're good enough to do so. Like for me, I'm a terrible visual artist. I cannot paint or draw anything. I'm bad at it. But I'm not trying to make a living doing that. Like I'm not, you know, it's just something I like to try to do. Or, you know, I have a guitar. I've been quote unquote playing guitar since I'm 16 years old and I know the same couple things, but it's, you know, just something I can do from time to time. And so I love talking, you know, I love talking about that sort of thing. And it's the reason the book is so immersed in the art world because everyone can be a part of it at different levels. And I think it inspires everyone. And it's, you know, really, you know, my own personal feelings about why we're here to love one another. I think, you know, I'm a Christian, so my belief in God is an important reason why I'm here in my relationship with the Lord, but then also art and flowers and just being here for the beauty in this world to fight against all the hard-edged, really nasty, dark stuff of this world, we have got to have, those things. And obviously I can go off talking about those things because I do feel very passionately about it, because I think you have to fight for those things in this life, because things get really, really dark and sad. And I think we have to fight for those bright things. Where we find them, we need to grab hold and don't let go.
Absolutely. I love that. I love the idea of you hanging out with Vincent and Lou too. I'm going to keep that image with me. I love it.
Good. Yeah. Go ahead and email me if you have any questions about what they're up to, like a little bit from now. Yeah. There you go.
I love it. So where can people find you if they want to keep up to date with you and your books and know about Goodbye Earl as well?
Yeah, for sure. So everywhere online, you can just find me at Leesa Cross Smith. I'm LeesaCrossSmith. So that's on Instagram and Twitter. And then I'm also on Facebook if you just look for me on there. And then my website, LeesaCrossSmith.com, where I just put everything there when I can remember to update that too. But yeah, I'm around. I'm pretty easy to find once you start poking around.
Fabulous. Thank you. And I'll include links for everything so people can poke around more easily.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. Thank you for taking the time to speak with me today. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you again to Leesa Cross Smith for such a lovely conversation. You can find Leesa on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Leesa Cross Smith. That's Leesa. And on her website, LeesaCrossSmith.com. Please join me next week when my guest will be author Rebecca Anderson. Check back next week to see if your questions have been answered and to hear a reading from her book, The Grand Promise. If you'd like to keep the conversation going, please join the Storytime in Paris book club, where you'll meet a different guest author each month and get to speak with them directly about their work. For more information, please visit patreon.com/Paris Underground Radio. I'm your host, Jennifer Garrity, and you can find me on all socials at Jennyphoria. That's JennyPhoria, and on my website, jennyphoria.com. Storytime in Paris is produced by me as part of the Paris Underground Radio Podcast Network. To check out interviews with previous guests or to discover more great Paris-based podcasts, please visit parisundergroundradio.com. Thank you, and until next time, happy reading! This episode of Storytime in Paris was produced by Jennifer Garrity for Paris Underground Radio. For more on this show and shows like it, please visit parisundergroundradio.com.